Welcome to the Dear Doc podcast, where we will discuss the business of running a dental practice with a panel of experts. Now, your host, Dr. Christopher Hoffpower.
Hey guys, and welcome to the Dear Doc podcast. This is your host, Dr. Christopher Hoffpower, coming to you again from my studio here in Alvin, Texas. Now, today I have a little bit of a different guest. In general, we tend to interview people who are directly involved in dentistry, but I think you guys are going to understand very quickly why we are introducing Mr. Mark Willis. Now, Mark, you are a man on a mission to make people think a little bit differently about their money. You are a certified financial planner and also a best-selling author. I have seen a couple of your books there. I'm intrigued by the title of one. It's the How to Become an Amazon Legend and Become Your Own Banker. And becoming my own banker is something I have long believed was one of the keys to freedom. So first of all, if you don't mind, introduce yourself. Talk to us a little bit about your history. How did you get into this? And why should people listen to you? What makes you an expert?
Well, thank you, Christopher. And you're right. There's a lot of financial infotainers out there, and I think even more financial professionals of various degrees. And sometimes the analogy holds true. I wouldn't want to just have anyone working on the teeth in my mouth. And similarly, there's a lot of people out there who shouldn't be in our heads when it comes to financial advice.
Right.
My own background didn't start in finance at all. In fact, the first time I was even really aware of finances to a great degree as a young child was when my mom took me with $50 in a paper bag down to the local bank to open up a savings account. And Christopher, I was concerned to give this stranger all of my hard-earned cash, $50 or whatever. And little did I know that the paper bag may have been more secure than the bank as I came to learn about fractional reserve banking and more.
Oh, you and I are going to have lots of fun talking
started.
then. It's funny. You are actually a certified financial planner, and you are an actual fiduciary. And one of the things that we kind of talked a little bit about off camera, first of all, was that a lot of people, they hand their money over to people who have no legal responsibility to make sure they get a good outcome. Or to try their best to make sure that the customer gets a good outcome. Talk to us a little bit about what a fiduciary is and why it is that you should be looking for like a CFP or something like that.
It's all labels, fiduciary, CFP. It still comes down to trust. It all still stems from the human relationship of trust. And, we're just codifying that trust with certain labels. And I think good labels make good outcomes. I mean, I look for USDA organic because I want a certain outcome in my food. The words all natural don't mean a whole lot. In fact, there's no regulation.
Natural.
Lead is natural. Right. That's right. Yeah. Now, I will also say there are still bad apples, even with the words fiduciary after their name. So that's not a cure-all. Right. If I remember, a certain Bernie Madoff was a fiduciary, just legally. So you still have to look and do your due diligence. The four most dangerous words in the financial vocabulary are do it for me. Do it for me. Abdication, I think, is the biggest risk in your portfolio. That doesn't mean you have to become a stock picker. It doesn't mean you have to be the next Warren Buffett, but you have to get your hands a little dirty with your money. No one should care more about your money than you do. And now when it comes to yes, sir. Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's exactly right. Now, when it comes to fiduciary, when it comes to certified financial planner, I went for that designation because I wanted to establish trust in the marketplace and to honestly get my own feet wet. I didn't grow up learning about dynastic trusts. I wasn't privileged enough to do that, I suppose. So it was a great mountain for me to climb. It took me about 3 years to get that designation. And I loved every minute of it. It was difficult as heck to get through. But, some people really loved that experience, and I was one of the weird ones, I guess. And I'd say anybody who wants it to come on, let's do it. I think there needs to be more certified financial planners out there. There's just not enough good advice going around. Now, you don't have to work with a CFP necessarily, but it just shows that you value your own money and your own financial journey to work with people who are pushing themselves hard enough to get that credential as well.
Well, one of the things that I am very known for saying in our groups is that when you are planning, and you should begin planning your future the moment you begin making money. But honestly, actually, you should begin planning the moment you begin making debt. Yeah,
that's a good way to put that.
You need a CPA who is not a taxpayer. You need a CPA who is a tax strategist. You need a lawyer who is familiar with tax laws, and you need a financial and estate planner. Really, you say that, and people are like, "Well, I'm not going to have an estate. I just want to leave some money." I'm like, well, that's your estate. It doesn't matter if you're, like you said, Warren Buffett. You need to keep as much of your money as possible, and without an estate planner, a tax lawyer to advise you, and a real CPA, you don't really have the tools you need to do what you need to do with your money. I talk to people about the Augusta rule or conservation easements, or any number of tax strategies, using whole life or something like that. Everything has its place, but everyone's got these all or nothing ideas, like particularly with whole life. A lot of them have been told by their tax strategists that, oh, whole life is a horrible product, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
To me, that's such a wrong-headed approach. It might be a horrible problem for some people, but more than likely, your tax strategist doesn't know how to employ it correctly. So talk to us a little bit about some of those strategies, and just kind of your philosophy and what tools you think people should be more knowledgeable about. Well,
you brought up a lot of great points there. I'd like to zoom out first and then come way down the ladder, if that's okay.
That's perfect.
I'll keep it brief. So the first and most fundamental question I think is helpful here, and that is, what do you truly want your money to do for you? Because where you keep your money makes it do different things. The simplest example is a 401k is different than a savings account or a shoebox under your mattress. Right. The key questions there are, what do you think about taxes in the future? What do you believe about the future of the market? What do you think you need your money for? Is it for kids' college? Is it for an X-ray machine? Is it for something that you'd like to eventually use as a way to get out of the practice and sell it someday? Do you want there to be contingencies on that money, like penalties if you access it too soon? Mm-hmm. Do you want there to be any kind of creditor protection if someone sues your business or you personally? So what do you want? And where you put your money makes it act differently. I realize these are just such plain and simple concepts, but at the core level, many of us jump into the SEP IRA because our taxpayer, how did you say that?
Taxpayer versus tax strategist.
Yeah, I like that. The taxpayer mentality is, let's get you the lowest taxes this year possible. And by the way, that is a good goal. To lower this year's taxes in every legal way possible, that's a good goal. A CFP, or I think, as you said, a tax strategist would be interested in not just this year's tax deductions, but how can we legally lower your taxes over your lifetime and even into 3 generations into the future? Mm-hmm. The Gloria Steinem quote comes to mind. Rich people plan for 3 generations and poor people plan for Saturday night.
Absolutely.
And that's true with our taxes, but that's true with our money too, isn't it? If we're always just spending on the latest shiny object, whether that's a non-fungible token or a cryptocurrency or a new Bentley, or whatever else, if we're not thinking long range, that's going to be a problem when it comes to our future selves. There's a funny Simpsons scene where Homer is drinking like mayonnaise and vodka or something, and Marge is like, Aren't you concerned that that's going to be bad for your future self? And he says, future Homer, sucks to be that guy. And it's just sort of a reminder that not all of us are thinking long range, at least not Homer Simpson, I guess. But Absolutely. The best of us, if we take a moment, is really asking ourselves, what do we truly want our money to do with for us over our lifetime, rather than us always having to work for the money?
It's a very good point. Very good point. So one of the topics that you suggested whenever we spoke really piqued my interest. It's why are tax deferred retirement accounts time bombs? And I believe I know exactly where you're going with that one, because, in my world view, the dollar will always be worth less tomorrow, and taxes will always be higher. We might have little spikes where there's reversals on that, but I think particularly with the amount of debt that we've created as a nation, and folks, if you haven't seen or read anything about debt as money or money being debt, you need to, because until you go down that hole and begin to understand the fractional reserve and the way that money is valued, and and what fiat currency truly is, you will never understand how to manage your money.
That's so true. There's a great book out there to reference that. It's called Debt: The First 5,000 Years by David Graeber. The first 5,000 years. That should be a wake-up call that banks have a grip on human civilization. And that's not a tinfoil hat thing. That's just the truth. That banks go clear back, as far back as we have religion, as clear back as we have, parenting. I don't know. I can't think of too many other human markers than banking. And that's a surprising statement, right?
Banking influenced religion greatly. That's why the early Christian religions had anti-usury laws, because not to get into too deep of a hole here, but because the Jewish bankers, they wanted to cripple the Jewish bankers, and that was Gosh, I don't want to get in too deep to that, but we'll just put it this way.
Well, I'll tell you.
Throughout history, people have used hate to organize other people.
That's so true.
I'll just leave that alone.
Well,
I'll leave that right there.
And I'll tell you two quick stories related to this, and then we'll get right back to some solutions maybe for your listeners as well. But I went to school in Texas, and I grew up in the Midwest. So driving across the moonscape of Texas was a little different for this Midwestern boy. And I noticed that I'd go through these small little Texas towns. First, it would be the bank. I'd see that. That was usually the biggest building or so, close to the biggest building. Then came the church, and then there was the bar. And I kind of thought of it in that order. First, we go to the bank because we're desperate for cash. They say no to the loan. Banks are pretty good at saying no when we need the money the most. Mark Twain there. And then we went to church to pray, and then we went to the bar to drink our sorrows away. That was sort of the order in which most of these towns would go. And that was sort of my experience. I went to college in Texas and got 6 figures of student loan debt for my wife and I. We had 3 private school degrees between us. And I felt like I married 2 women in college, my beautiful wife and Sally Mae. She was along for the ride. Absolutely. And you're right. Without debt, there is no such thing as money. Without debt, there is no such thing as money. And my only proposition here is to say, who is sitting behind your banker's desk? And I don't care if you paid cash for every piece of equipment in your dental office. I don't care if you pay cash for your cars and your vacations. You're still in the banking business. And here's why. Either you pay interest to the bank, cars, vacations, home repairs, business equipment, or you pay cash and you pass up interest you could have earned on that money had you not bought that thing, whatever it was. In fact, we finance everything we buy. And so one of the biggest questions is, who is doing your banking? That's one of those questions of, hey, what do I want my money to do for me? Well, it'll be in the banking business. You're already in 2 businesses. You're in your dental practice, for example, and you're in the banking business. And the only question is, whose side of the banker's desk are you sitting on? So we do specialize in some, it's one of those small hinges that swing the big door in your financial life, Christopher. And that's one reason why our firm at Lake Growth has decided to really drill in, sorry for the bad pun there, but drill into the concepts of self-banking and to become our own source of financing. It's a tremendous strategy that opens up a lot of opportunity to make our businesses more competitive, to make our financial life more sane, because we're living in pretty insane times right now. And so it's given our clients a lot of resolve that they can meet their financial goals without taking a bunch of unnecessary risk.
Absolutely. I love a lot of what you're saying there. I want you to unpack it a little bit more. And I'll just tell you, and I think that this is going to bring a smile to your face. I am our household CEO, and my wife is our household CFO. And that is how we act in our duties in our household. We believe our household should be run as a business, and it has stood us in very, very good stead. it enabled me to get to a point where I could retire by the age of 45. Now, am I retired? I don't have to work. I enjoy working. In fact, I enjoy working a lot more now that I don't have to work. But, it's
great.
It's one of those things. But I think everyone should view their household that way, because if they do, then, exactly like what you were talking about here, there's a term I just love, and it's cost of opportunity. Now, you brought up something I'd never thought about before. Paying cash has its own cost of opportunity, and that's absolutely brilliant. So expound upon that a little bit, unpack the things that you're talking about, and then let's go ahead and hit on those time bombs.
Well, sure. Yeah. So there is a cost to paying cash, and I think we've made it clear, but it's unbelievable when you start to do the math on that. Even if you just buy your cars with cash, let's say you buy, on average, the average person's going to buy about 10 to 12 cars over their lifetime. 30 grand a car, that's hundreds of thousands of just pure dollars, and then put a nominal interest rate on that, what you could have invested that money at over your lifetime. That's could be $500,000 to $1 million just to buy your cars with cash. Just gone. Absolutely. Then throw a couple kid college degrees in there, and anything, a couple of vacations, hopefully, plus your retirement, for goodness sakes. So it's literally millions of dollars of lost opportunity just because of how we bought stuff. Okay, so that's one cipher, you might say, or one siphon away from our wealth reserve. Another massive siphon away from our wealth reserve is the IRS. Christopher, unfortunately, the biggest inheritor who's going to receive the most from you over our lifetime is not your wife or spouse, not your children, but the IRS. There's a reason why they call it the IRS. You put those two words together, the IRS, you get the word theirs, because it's all theirs. All right.
I love it.
And tax deferred plans are a ticking tax time bomb. And it's a lot like putting off a root canal. Do you put off things that you don't want? Like a root canal, the worse it gets, the worse you want to go in and fix it. But the longer you wait, the worse it gets. It's like a downward spiral. So, when I look at the future, I don't know about you, and most of the clients I meet with over Zoom or over the telephone, we'll have a full financial analysis. And I don't presume to know everyone's tax situation, and I don't presume to know the future. I mean, my batteries in my crystal ball died a long time ago, so I don't have any claim to the future here. But when I look at the deficits and I look at, unpaid wars and, social programs, et cetera, I don't see a world where we don't have higher taxes. In fact, they're already here.
Yep.
They're already here. And now we even if Congress doesn't act, which, as of late March 2021, when we're recording this, they're talking about eliminating the 1031 exchange on real estate, changing capital gains to income tax, raising the tax thresholds on income earners over 200 grand as an individual.
Don't forget the death tax too. They're bringing that
death
back.
tax, yeah. Yep. So the estate tax will be re-implemented. I believe it'll eventually come down. Social Security is now going to be exposed to taxes up to whatever your income is. So there's a mark on your back, and the IRS has their name on your 401k, IRA, 403b, SEP IRA, any kind of defined qualified plan that you might have set up through your practice, dental practice, or IRAs outside of your dental practice, anything in their book. If the government creates a problem, for example, onerous taxation, and then they create a solution to the problem, like a tax deferred plan, don't you just have at least a little bit suspicious inkling that maybe you're being manipulated in this whole arrangement?
What are the most frightening words in the world?
I'm from the IRS. I'm here to help you.
Right.
Yeah. You're so right. So there's a lot of places you can put your money that have been around since before the IRS, since before the income tax system, that are completely legal and responsible places that can even help your dental practice or your personal life in many ways.
Absolutely.
And you brought up whole life insurance. I'll take a few minutes to just explain one of those tools,
please,
that helps solve the tax issue, the banking issue. Okay. So whole life insurance has been around since before the U.S. Constitution, at least as far back as I could research, and even before that, if you go to other countries. But this contract is a private contract between you and the insurance company. So it was not written into the tax law. I was looking the other day, and the 401k was written into the tax law, and the first 401k was issued in 1981. So do the math. The 401k is not even old enough to retire yet. That's how young the 401k experiment is, and it's just sort of thought like it's, like it was created on the 8th day or something like that.
Right.
But it's fairly new. And we're all in that grand experiment. Now, contrast that with whole life insurance, which has 200 plus years of history, and it has and still enjoys incredible tax advantages. It's set up to put money in after tax, like a Roth IRA, and then it grows on a tax deferred basis, and you never get taxed if you've designed it correctly on the principal or the gains.
Right.
The tax law today says there's no taxes on policy loans or withdrawals of cash value. So you can withdraw the entire amount.
Being your own banker.
That's right. Yes. Yeah, exactly. So
there are some rather complex ways that these things can be structured. For instance, on the sale of a business, one of the things that you can do is you can actually take the entire sales amount, and you can actually have a loan from another company that gives you the entire sales amount. They take that sales amount and they put it into a tax deferred program. I hate to call it a trust, but you know the vehicle I'm talking about. And then you actually take out a term life insurance policy on that, so that whenever the trust matures, the money that you would normally pay in taxes is actually paid for entirely by the life insurance policy. But these are vehicles that most people, even everyone was told, you're of an age with me, everyone was told when they were kids you wanted to be a doctor, a lawyer, or an astronaut, because those were success. That's not true. You go downtown, I don't see a single lawyer's name on the tallest buildings. I don't see a doctor's name on the tallest buildings. I don't see an astronaut's name. I see banks' names.
That's a really good point. Yeah.
And the reason is because they know about these vehicles and they use them. Mm-hmm. So talk to us a little bit about that, and how someone could effectively pay no taxes and get 100% of the value of a practice sale if they follow these very specific guidelines.
There's so many applications, and it can range from the brain dead simple to the infinitely complex. So for a podcast, I'm going to keep mostly on the simple side of this, but you're exactly right. There's some very, very cool ways to eliminate the taxes on the sale of a business, to work into a trust situation where you've got some significant tax savings over multiple generations. But let's keep it, if you don't mind, or at least to the beginning,
Absolutely.
I'll keep it sort of to the simple side. So if we've got a whole life policy, it does a few things really well. I mean, it's not a cure-all, and it's not a perfect instrument for everybody. So I'll quickly mention that you don't want to just jump into one of these because you heard it on a podcast, even one as cool as the Dear Doc podcast. You still want to sit down and chat with a professional who knows what your situation is. So,
and we are certainly super cool.
Yes, absolutely. So there's a couple of things that this can do. It's sort of a Swiss Army knife. For one, you put cash into the policy, and it's tax-free for the rest of your life. The IRS tax law says you can get the money out with no taxes due. So that's number one. Number two, it can be scheduled and grows on a predictable and even guaranteed basis. So your cash value, the money you can use and spend on this side of heaven, grows on a predictable and guaranteed basis. So that's the second piece. By the way, I'm doing a TGIF acronym here to keep track of all this. So tax advantages, and even tax-free is T. Guarantees, every year it grows on a guaranteed schedule, and the gains are locked in. Last year when I made money on my policies, they can't take that away if someone sneezes the wrong way on Wall Street this year. It's guaranteed to grow every single year. And then the third piece is it is life insurance. So insurance, TGIF, it is life insurance. So I can set up an estate sale. I can set up a liquidation of my real estate. I can set up a multiples gift to my kids or my wife with no income tax due, by the way, on that. So it's a income tax-free gift to my beneficiaries, a favorite charity, a business partner, whatever I want to do there. And the last piece, and to the point of banking, it is a way for us to become our own source of financing. It can be our own source of financing. So you can use the cash value, Christopher, to borrow against the life insurance cash value and buy things like cars or dental chairs or whatever else you might want to use it for. And the policy will continue to grow for us as if we had not taken the loan. So case in point, if you've got $100,000 of cash value, let's say you borrow out $30,000 to go buy a car or something, that year you'll still get guarantees and dividends paid on the full $100,000 as if there was no loan against the policy. Now, to me, that beats paying cash because Absolutely. It overcomes that problem of opportunity cost.
I love it. Absolutely love it. Okay, so I asked you a question earlier, and then you and I haired off, and we had some fun talking about a couple of other things. And I'm glad that we brought those up because, frankly, a lot of people don't know about them. Talk to me about these interest-deferred retirement accounts. Why are they time bombs?
Yeah, well, I mean, think about it this way. There's a number in your 401k or IRA. You look at that number. You might log in and see it every single day. And it feels good to see $1 million sitting in your 401k, let's say. But what is that? Is that really yours? It's a surprise, according to the Society of Actuaries, when people learn that a good third of your money is going to end up in the hands of the IRS. All right. So there's a mark on the back of your 401k, IRA, SEP IRA, 403b, even your self-directed IRAs, where they're going to take a good portion of that money and call it theirs. If you had $1 million and tried to get it in your pocket tomorrow, it would look suspiciously like 600 grand after tax. Okay. Now I could go through the math on how guaranteed the IRS will have a higher rate of return on your money than you do, which we could get into if you wanted to. But the math works out there where the IRS gets a greater return on your money than you will. But I guess I just make mention to most people, what is your understanding of the future of taxes in your personal life? Most people will ask me that question. Well, Mark, I believe, Mark, that taxes are going to go up in the future. And then I'll say, hey, so tell me about where you're saving money today. And they'll say, well, I'm saving money in my 401k. I'm maxing out my 401k. And I'll say, great work. Incredible job living within your means. That is the hardest job in the financial universe. Everything else is secondary to living within your means. But what sense does it make? I'll ask this as politely as I can, because they're doing a great job. They're just trying to get by. They got kids to raise and a business to run. But I'll say to them, hey, what's important about putting money into a tax-deferred vehicle if you believe that taxes are going to be higher in the future? And many of them will say, well, Mark, I've never really thought about it. And that's okay. They're not sitting there Friday night waking up in a cold sweat wondering why their tax rates are going to be higher in the future. They're just trying to get their kids through high school or whatever. But it's important once you've had that aha moment to decide for yourself, do you want to change that? Back to the original question, what do you want your money to do for you? To me, I don't want a partner in my retirement, at the IRS. I'm not interested in leaving the IRS more than I'm leaving my kids, which is also a guaranteed possibility. It's a guaranteed actuality that if I have an inherited IRA leaving to my 2 children, the IRS will be the greatest beneficiary of that IRA. I didn't work that hard to leave the vast majority of my wealth to the IRS. Okay, I'm off my soapbox. Does that kind of get to that question of tax-deferred time bombs?
It does. It really does. So what is the rate of return that investors can expect from their stock market portfolio?
Yeah, so
a lot of people say, well, I'll just take that money and I'll put it in the stock market.
Yeah.
Because there's no volatility there at all.
No volatility, yeah. Well, you bring up a great word. The word volatility is a very special word. And people discount it, I think, because they say, oh, well, it'll always bounce back. It'll always come back.
Mark, I don't like exciting things. I'm a really boring guy. I want boring and certain. I don't need to gamble.
Yeah. There's a lot that's unsure in this world right now. And we've had 3 major market corrections since the year 2000. 3 major, like upwards of 50% market corrections just since the year 2000. My question for you, for the audience is, are we done yet? Is that the end of volatility? I don't think so.
No,
I think we've got more craziness to come.
So that you know where I'm coming from here. In September of 2019, the Wall Street Journal ran an article, and that article was that the Fed had just released a white paper, and that white paper was discussing the possibilities and possible effects of negative interest rates on the U.S. economy. So that made me start thinking, and I looked at it and said, okay, well, why would they do that? I mean, obviously, there's a correction they think they won't be able to do any kind of easement on, right? And so I started researching with their unemployment rate. I started researching how high the stock market was. I started looking at interest rates and how low they were. And I had a sudden epiphany moment. The only time they've ever looked like that in history is right before the Great Depression. And that scared me straight. I pulled every cent I had out of the stock market. And I went and I listened to my financial advisor, and I put it where the hell they told me to, so I could ride out the storm that I thought was coming. Now, luckily, and I also sold 70% of my practice and became debt free. That, like, February 16th, I will remember that day for the rest of my life. I was debt free. Now,
nice.
After I did that, I took that money and I sat on it. And when this crash from COVID came, I purchased a second practice at pennies on the dollar. I purchased a practice that was collecting $1.5 million for $400,000. And so, which is a huge
great.
gain.
That's awesome.
And then I sold 70% of that one to the people I partnered with. And so I'm pretty good now, you know.
You're thinking different, weren't you? You weren't just letting the thing ride, right?
Absolutely. And that's the thing, is I think that a lot of people don't realize that worse is coming. And I don't want to sound like an alarmist, but I mean, when the horsemen of the apocalypse are freaking galloping through your front yard, and if no one sees this, then they're not looking. So talk to us a little bit about that. And I've just made some bold statements I know that you probably can't make, but I don't see you shaking your head no.
That's right. Well, I personally only invest or speculate with money I can afford to lose. Anything else, I don't call it investing. I call that saving.
Right.
And I put my money in places that don't go down. If I call that saving, that's putting money in something that does not go down. Okay. And if I have money in something that could go down, I'm going to call that investing or speculating. So I agree with you. I think there's we're living in incredible times, and to think it's all going to be all right, or this has happened before, or we'll just bounce back from it. I think a lot of times
never happened before.
No. And especially, I think in some of the audience, some of your audience, their dental practice has never gone through something like this before, at least not in the last 100 years.
Right.
And so I look for financial institutions that have already done this before. And life insurance companies have been around through pandemics. Okay, so they were actually paying out dividends and profits in the 1918 pandemic. And before that, through a civil war. Okay, so if you feel like that might be coming, look to insurance companies that have made it through other civil wars. What about a crash in the dollar? Insurance companies existed before the US dollar did. That should say something about the permanence of that particular contract. What is insurance? It is a contract. What is a contract? Well, I guess you could say it's sort of the basis of civilization. If you really drill all the way down to it, the basis of civilization, if we lose the contract, well, we'd lose every business we own, every rental property we have, and every insurance contract we own. Now, I guess I'd be more concerned about firewood and ammunition at that point, but that's a really foundational premise, that we have a contract with a private party. That's why I look at the life insurance industry as a good, safe store of value, regardless of the currency that we might be living under. When we need the cash or whatever we have in the future, crypto dollars or Spanish pesos or whatever we have next.
Vodka and ammunition, I think, is probably what's
man, right on. I'll have my cash value dividend in vodka, please. Thank you. On ice. So I will mention one quick thing to your original question. So I'll back away from the apocalypse for a minute. The last 30 years. Yeah. Don't turn around. Yeah. So the last 30 years, I'm going to give you a total pop quiz. I have no idea if you know. It doesn't matter if you get it right or wrong. There's no grade here. But what do you think the real investor returns okay, the real investor returns of the stock market over the last 30 years, according to third-party research. What would you guess the real investor returns if you were all in on equities, so no bonds?
Okay.
What do you think
All right.
the return was?
3.25.
How did you get that number so close? That was scarily accurate. Yeah, it's 3.8, I think.
I just figured with the rate of inflation that it had to be about 3.25.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Isn't that interesting? And I have told clients before that over the long term, it's almost impossible to beat that mean.
Absolutely. Yep. And that's in value leveraged is the thing is, that's accounting for inflation. What they don't report to you whenever you look at Tweedy Brown or you look at Vantage or one of these other mutual funds or whatever, they'll always say they have like a 12.5, 12.9%. They don't talk about the management funds that go into that come out of that, and or fees that come out of that. And they also don't talk about value averaging whenever you look at the cost of keeping your money in the market when you're looking at inflation. So,
well, yeah, so true.
So what is your average on life insurance?
Well, I'll say this first. Sort of like labels on financial professionals, fiduciary, CFP, averages also mean nothing. Although I carry those labels and we can talk average rates of return. The average return is meaningless. Let me give you a quick example. Let's say you gave me 10 grand and I put it into the market. I invest it in the market and I double your money. 100% growth. Okay. 10 grand goes up to $20,000. Year 2, you're so pleased with me. You keep, investing with me. Year 2, unfortunately, I lost you half of your life savings there. Half of 100 grand is back down, or 200 grand back down to your original 100 grand. Okay. So we started with 100 grand. 2 years later, you ended with 100 grand. We went up 200. We dropped down to 100. We went up 100%. We dropped negative 50. If you do the average on that, that's an average rate of return of 25%.
Absolutely.
And that is what mutual funds are allowed to advertise. And now, do you feel any wealthier after that 2-year process?
Not a bit.
I didn't think so.
Not a bit.
Volatility is what wipes out your gains. So you rightly pointed to volatility. The real return, or the compound annual growth rate, or the internal rate of return, are better metrics than the average rate of return. But I think it's scary to say, but the average return is pitifully small in the stock market, and many people come out with less money, and the only reason their 401k is up is because they're the ones contributing to it. Okay. Now, I'll just mention this. You brought up fees. And the Department of Labor says a 1% assets under management fee over 30 years will wipe out a third of your life savings. A third to fees for passive index funds or other junk that's in the 401k. Now, I'll have one more question, then I'll hush, I promise.
Okay.
But how much, we talked earlier about how the IRS is a partner in your 401k or IRA. We've talked about that. How much did they pony up for their side of the fee?
Oh, man. We had an agreement that I would pay it all.
Yeah. Isn't that generous of you, my friend?
Yeah, that's awesome. Fair to me at the time.
Well, it's surprising that the fee is a lot higher than 1% when you realize that you don't have all of your $1 million or whatever the 401k is. It's a much higher fee in that regard. And the 3.8%, by the way, that the third-party research firm Dalbar came to the conclusion that over 30 years, the quantitative analysis of investor behavior study that recently came out and comes out every year. It's no big change, no big surprise to me after I've read a few of these. But Dalbar's report says 3.8% is the average return before taxes. Before taxes. So our real return is not even keeping up with inflation when you factor in taxes. And that troubles me because it's the phrase, what we do around here. We're all supposed to get this 401k. It's the adult thing to do. It's what we're just told to, we're handed this 401k or this IRA, or our CPA gave us the SEP IRA, promising us all these wonderful tax deductions. And oh, by the way, he'll be retired before you start to see those taxes in retirement. So there's a lot of people pushing you into things that are not in your best interest. Our job is to hopefully push back against the frontiers of ignorance and give yourself the best options and the best opportunity to survive. Now, we've talked taxes and we've talked market volatility. I'm going to share just one other idea on this life insurance thing because I think it bears repeating. You can access the cash value in this policy for any reason. Now, in the event that we go through another crisis like we did last spring, and Christopher, you were smartly ready to pounce on opportunities. And I don't know your financial situation, but I bet some liquidity helped you there, right? Having
Absolutely.
some access to cash got you that deal. So liquid access to cash is one of the features of whole life insurance if it's designed the bank on yourself way. So without having to beg a bank, without having to scratch together your P&L statements from the last 3 years, you can access the cash value in the policy via a withdrawal or a loan within about a week. The money's directly deposited in your bank account, and you can use that to help your business thrive or even buy other businesses like you.
So my end cost ended up being about $145,000 after closing costs and everything for my portion of the 30% that I retained. So I may or may not have taken out a loan against a whole life policy to do that, and then immediately paid it back from the gains. Just maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just saying, hashtag just saying. That's awesome. Yeah. Well, you're in a long line of successful business owners that have done that. I've got plenty of clients' testimonials there, but famous folks too. J.C. Penney through the Great Depression took a loan from his life insurance. Walt Disney took a loan to help construct Disneyland. The list goes on. Presidential candidates, congressmen and women. There's a reason why in 2021, the recent budget reconciliation further protects life insurance into the generations to come. So they keep doing this, guys. The public servants have lots of money in life insurance cash value. They have to disclose their balance sheets when they run for office.
These are the tools of the rich. And, it's some of them are really well kept secrets. And it's the reason that the rich stay rich. And it's the reason that so many other people don't become wealthy, even though they have these great jobs that produce wonderful, wonderful income. They're just putting things into the wrong vehicles.
Yeah. You're so right. It comes down to the question of where do you want to put your money? Now that you've earned it, now that you've been able to live within your means, the question is, what do you want your money to do for you? I'll keep returning to that mantra, but there's a checklist we help our clients go through of about 24 different characteristics, attributes. But I just say, hey, if nothing else, take half an hour, journal entry, whatever you want to do, and just come up with your own special list. Pretend you're Pope of money for the day. If you could create a brand new financial instrument that does everything you want it to do, and then just write it all down, and let's see if it exists, and let's see if it's legal. And then you can go about putting your money where you want.
That's a good caveat right there, because I guarantee it exists.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
No, the rate. I hear the rate of return on cocaine is fantastic this time of year.
Yeah. So, well, hey, I love it. I think if we could find a combination of safe and predictable and liquid, and lucrative, easy, and fun. I mean, that's the dental practice and whole life insurance side by side. It's like a barbell. You put both sides together and you've got some incredible opportunities there. Absolutely. And with the income potential of a dental practice and with the liquidity, wealth reserves of a life insurance policy, you balance the risk asset, your business, with the risk-free asset, your life insurance policy. You've got yourself a great portfolio with just those two.
I think one of the points that's not made nearly enough is that although a dental practice is a great source of income, it is actually, and a lot of dentists think of their practice as an investment. It is actually one of the riskiest investments in your entire portfolio. And that is because it's depending on these. As soon as you can't use these anymore, it's worthless, it's valueless. And we know all of us are going to get older, but what we don't know is what's going to happen to us in between, the things that we aren't expecting for, that we can't plan for, accidents, traumatic brain injury. There's, my wife is a veterinarian, and she likes to say that if she lost the use of her hands, she could always teach as long as her mind was sharp. And I suppose in a sense that we as dentists can do that as well, although definitely Definitely we couldn't teach the trade that we have. But that practice is worthless as soon as you lose the ability to do dentistry. And so I would caution the dentists out there who think of their practice as their biggest investment, that their biggest investment should not be something as they go into retirement that has so much chance of total loss of value.
So true. Well, my respect is with anyone who's built a successful business. It's obviously clear that you were smart enough and skilled enough to do that. Not many businesses make it. So for those that are listening that are running a successful, profitable business, you've got my respect, and you've got, I think, the weight of the country on your shoulders. In fact, if you kind of read between the lines of the updates to the tax law that seem to be coming down the pipe this year, it appears that the particular people who are going to be targeted are the high-earning service professionals, people who are in the field of everyone listening to this. If you're an entrepreneur and you're in the S quadrant, as Kiyosaki would talk about, not an employee, not an investor, but a service professional, a small business owner with your name hanging on the shingle, so to speak, you will pay more taxes per dollar earned than any other person in the next tax law, whatever comes down the pipe. So I think part of why it's so important to listen to Christopher's podcast and to listen to similar strategies, similar podcasts, is that it gives you the eyes to see what's coming and to plan accordingly. If you want to change your tax situation, you have to change the facts of your situation. You have to become an investor. You have to do what Christopher did and start doing some deals on top of using your fingers and hands and your mind even to run that practice. Because you're right, someday we're going to exit everything in our life. I mean, that's just the way of life, So what are you doing today to build up assets on the balance sheet of your business so that you can sell it someday? What are you doing to protect that business and brand so that you can have something to sell to the next person or the next generation? In fact, I'll just quickly mention that these life insurance contracts can be assets on the balance sheet of the business, which build up a contingency pool for your own needs, for the next dental chair or marketing campaign or whatever you got to do, direct mail, whatever. But it's also something you can use as a golden parachute for yourself or an asset to be sold with the business when it's time to sell. So it's like I said, Swiss Army knife. It does kind of work in a lot of venues, but the key here is to think beyond just your fingers. The tools that help bring in the revenue. Because you're so right. There's nothing guaranteed about us being able to continue our practice. If it's all dependent on us, it may not last forever.
I love it. So I'm going to end with a little story here, or a joke really, about statistics, just to bring home, give us a little bit of a lighter side, because we've been talking about some pretty dark stuff here financially. So this insurance company was trying to hire an actuary. So they put out an ad, and it said that they needed somebody who had a great facility with mathematics. And so a mathematician comes in and they ask him a question. He says, so what is 22 divided by 7? He said, well, that's pi. He said, yeah, but what number is it? It's 3.14. Okay, great. And so they get another guy who comes in. He says, well, I have a great facility with math. I'm actually a mechanical engineer. And they asked him, okay, well, what is 22 divided by 7? He said, well, it's, hold on, let me see. And he pulls out a slide rule and he does some math. And he said, it's 3.14285714 rounded. And they said, well, that's very good. Thank you. Wait in the other room. And so the next guy comes in and they say, so what do you do? And he says, well, I'm a statistician. And they say, okay, well, what's 22 divided by 7? He says, well, what do you want it to be?
Yes.
So, my friend, one of my engineer friends told me that joke.
Well, I love that. I think that's really true. Statistics are what we want them to be. If numbers don't lie, but people do, I think is the old phrase.
Well, what was you like Samuel Clemens a lot? What did he say about statistics? Lies, damn lines of statistics.
Oh man, remind me.
Oh, he said there's 3 kinds of lies. There's lies, there's damn lies, and there's statistics.
And there's statistics. That's right. Well, and you mentioned engineers. I'll throw in a joke too for your listeners who stayed to the end. You get a little prize. So if you're an engineer type like me, or if you hang out with the cool kids who are engineers, I've been told that arguing with an engineer is like wrestling with a pig in the mud. After a few hours, you realize the pig likes it.
That is very true. That is very true. All right. Mark, how can they get in touch with you if they would like to talk to you a little bit more about some of these tax strategies and about what they can do to better their situation and plan for the future?
Well, if you want to hear more about these or other strategies that we've helped our clients set up for their practice, you can go to bit.ly/quick, BOY. That's bit.ly/quick, B as in Bravo, O as in Oscar, Y as in Yo-Yo. Quick boy. That's quick bank on yourself. That's what that stands for. And I'd love to chat. We do a 15-minute consult. It's also a link to our podcast, which is Not Your Average Financial Podcast. But that quick website is bit.ly/quickboy.
Now, as much as it's Not Your Average Podcast, folks, that's actually the name. So
yeah, that is the name of the show. Yeah, Not Your Average Financial Podcast.
So if you wouldn't mind, go ahead and send me that link, and I will place it in the description of this podcast so that our listeners can get in touch with you and hopefully get themselves into a favorable position when they retire. Fantastic.
It's been a privilege being with you. And I got to just quickly share with your listeners, everybody stop what you're doing right now and go give Christopher a 5-star review. They matter. And your words encourage him to keep doing the great show he's doing. So take a moment. I know he may share this occasionally, but I want to reemphasize, get out there and give him some great kudos on the interwebs. Share this on social with him, and get that 5-star review so he feels like, he's doing something important, which he is. So I'd say everybody just go out there and get that 5-star review for Christopher.
I appreciate it, Mark. Guys, thank you for joining us again for the Dear Doc podcast. You have wasted another hour of your life listening to the sound of my voice. Congratulations on that. We hope to see you here again soon. This is Doc Huffpower signing off.
Thanks for listening to the Dear Doc podcast, your source for the business and legal questions associated with your dental practice. Don't forget to subscribe to the Dear Doc podcast on all major platforms.